Welcome back once more. This is Sunday edition here on KTN News. Very quickly to some of your views on what we have been discussing in the last 30 minutes. The Balozi Mugo says on Twitter, we can crucify suspects in the court of public opinion, but we cannot allow our courts to veer off the law, in particular Article 159, and entertain personal convictions. Tom J. Moore says, in the fight against corruption, we should change our laws to guilty until proven innocent. This thing is killing us. Check the latest corruption index. And finally, Don Sabo says, we can see the big money is working. This is his opinion, of course, saying, where's Lilian Bogo now? Omolo, how is she perceived in the public eye in comparison with the other two, the other who have similar cases? Keep your tweets and texts coming. The hashtag on Twitter is Sunday Edition. Keep that conversation ongoing. Let's now switch gears and turn our attention to some politics that did happen this past week. The Court of Appeal did nullify the election of Machakos Governor Dr. Alfred Mutua. It did hold up the election of Embakasi East MP Babu Owino. So Wavinya Ndeti has been celebrating the court, ordering the IEBC to conduct a fresh election for Machakos County in accordance with the law. The Machakos governor saying he will appeal that decision at the highest court in the land. Let's listen in.
These are the final orders of the court. A, the appellant's appeal is allowed and the judgment and order of the High Court given on 9th February 2018 is hereby set aside. B, it is hereby directed that the third respondent was not validly declared as the governor of Machakos County. C, IEBC is hereby directed to organize and conduct fresh elections for the position of Governor Machakos County in conformity with the Constitution, the Elections Act, and the relevant regulations. D, the certificate issued by the Elections Court pursuant to Section 86 of the Elections Act is hereby set aside and substituted with a certificate that the third respondent was not validly declared as having been elected as governor during the elections held on the 8th of August 2017. E, the first and second respondent shall pay to the appellants costs incurred before the election court to be taxed but not to exceed 1.5 million. F, the third respondent shall pay to the appellants costs incurred before the elections court to be taxed but not to exceed 1.5 million. And the third, that's G, the first and the second respondent shall pay the appellant's costs in this appeal not to exceed 1 million shillings. The third respondent shall pay costs of this appeal to be taxed but not to exceed 1 million shillings. Those are the orders of the court.
It has come to pass what the Machakos people did. Machakos people voted, Machakos people won, and their victory was taken from them. The people of Machakos, I want to tell you today, your victory has come back to you. You voted for me, and I won. God has proven himself. The people of Machakos, thank you. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Jesus. I want to thank you for standing by me and understanding me. Mimi nilinyamaza na nikaingia kwa maombi because I saw how you were hurt by the declaration of the elections. I just want to thank God, and I want to say this victory is for the people of Machakos County. It is not Wavinya's victory, and we thank God for it.
Confirmed that indeed the declaration of results in Machakos was not done in accordance with the Constitution, and that the will of the people was subverted when that declaration was made. It is indeed a day for us to celebrate justice. It has been a long journey. We've managed to prove our case, and it's very clear if you read that judgment. It's one of what I can call a very concise, precise judgment that develops jurisprudence on electoral justice in this country. We just now look forward to the next phase of this process.
We respect the judgment and we respect the Court of Appeal. We are surprised, and I'm very surprised by their finding, because it is very clear they totally misunderstood what really was presented before them. There are issues or facts that they look like they have contradicted themselves. And so we are not worried because we know that we are validly elected. We know that the people of Machakos are behind us. And we are going to appeal to the Supreme Court. And as a result of our intention to appeal, we continue being on office. That means that it automatically puts a stay to the findings of the Court of Appeal. So we are still in office. And I'll continue being in office and discharging my duties. I want to tell my people that there is nothing to worry about. Nobody did anything wrong during the election period. This is part of the process.
We are already moving the Supreme Court as our constitutional rights, because there's a fundamental right under Article 38 for him to seek to be elected and, if elected, to hold office. Already, as it is, the judges have misconstrued even the analysis of the law as it ought to apply, in that they've not even considered the principle of the little man at the booth, in that when a person goes to vote and they vote, that is the primary concern in an election. They never questioned the validity of the votes. They only nullified the election on the basis of a prescribed form in declaration of the results.
So close to 10 months later, 10 months after the last general election, the people of Machakos will be going back to the ballots for that gubernatorial election, according to orders from the Court of Appeal. Gentlemen, let's talk about this away from the courts, of course. Dismas, did you expect this? I mean, in February, the High Court did hold up Mutua's election. The Court of Appeal now has nullified it. Mutua says that the Court of Appeal did not understand the facts and the evidence before them, and is going to the Supreme Court. What do we expect? Can he get his way? Are we going to another election?
Well, two different things. Number one, the president of the Supreme Court, Chief Justice Maraga, has indicated that he has very low appetite for election petitions outside the presidency. So there's even a very high probability that when Dr. Mutua goes to the Supreme Court, he will be told that as far as they are concerned, the Court of Appeal has done a ruling and that's final. And you recall in the past administration, the Supreme Court entertained so many petitions. And for Maraga has indicated that they'll be very keen only on presidential petitions or giving advisory opinions. So that probability does exist.
Right.
And then the probability of one judge making a mistake is very high. But the probability of 3 judges making a mistake is significantly lower. So if Mutua feels that the High Court judge was a better decision and now the Court of Appeal has negated it, and he thinks that by going to the Supreme Court is going to get better treatment, I think he's going to be surprised. And indeed, if he won the elections the way he claims, then he should be very delighted to go back to the voters to prove to the entire world that indeed the Court of Appeal has done a mistake. And I think moving forward, we should start looking at the judiciary and at the courts just like that they make their ruling based on facts and evidence presented. Now, there are some statements all over in the streets that this is a result of the handshake. And when you go through that ruling, you don't find the handshake anywhere. You don't find that we are now in receipt of instructions from President Kenyatta or Raila Odinga to make a ruling in a particular way. I think that's mischievous propaganda being released to the public by folks who have lost the election. Now, on the balance of probability, when you look at Ovinya Ndeti, a probability of winning is very high, given the fact that from the time Dr. Mutua won, when he was declared the winner, he's managed to create so many enemies. There is information that he fired so many public servants, and then when people go down to check out exactly what he's done, then they're not able to feel the development projects, because he's been painting a very rosy picture of what he's been able to deliver. But when you go to the ground, a number of people say it's a raw deal, because folks are beginning to ask themselves, when you go to Machakos, what is the priority? Is it the People's Park, or is it coming up with the boreholes? That when he takes the decision, are they influenced by public participation, or maybe it's because of his fertile imagination? Given the fact that he's a movie producer, he's a communication expert, he can be overzealous in what he's doing.
Right.
And if you look at this election, my last point, probability of Ovinya Ndeti winning is very high.
Right.
And if she wins that election, she becomes the next Machakos governor, then automatically she's going to become the Kamba kingpin. And I suspect that this election we need to watch out carefully whether or not Kalonzo Musyoka is going to, in fact, support Wavinya Ndeti.
Kamba Kingpin, that's a bit, but we're coming back to that.
Well, Queenpin, sorry, because I'm sorry, you know, yaliyopita sio ndwele and ndwele isipite. So sorry for that. But if Wavinya Ndeti wins this by-election, because again, probability of having this by-election is very high.
Right.
She wins that election, then she becomes the next person to watch within the Kamban political space.
Good thoughts. Mark, what do you think about this?
Queenpin or not, I'm not sure. But what is definite to happen, if there is going to be a by-election in Machakos, what you can be sure is it will be a referendum on Maendeleo Chap-Chap. So Alfred Mutua better hope that his roads have weathered the storm that has braided Kenya for the last 6 months. But if rumor is to be held to be true, then these roads have been washed away. And if the roads have been washed away, then Alfred Mutua might as well consider himself washed away with the floods as well. Because the truth of the matter is, if he cannot prove Maendeleo Chap-Chap, then his governorship is as good as dead. Especially bearing the fact, and I agree with Dismas on this one, that if the Supreme Court holds to its statement that they will restrict themselves to matters interpretation and matters regarding presidential petition, then Alfred Mutua will remain without recourse. And it is my hope, for the sake of closure, that the Court of Appeal can be considered what it's supposed to be, the end of a matter. The Supreme Court is supposed to exist for matters interpretation and presidential petitions. In fact, even constitutional issues are handled at the High Court. It is the Constitutional Court of Kenya. And therefore, it is my humble opinion that we actually do need to have a by-election in Machakos, not because I favor either candidate, but because we need to have closure in such matters. But again, a warning to Alfred Mutua, if the rains washed away your roads, then your governorship is equally washed away.
All right. Today is a great day. It is a very rare occurrence for you to agree with Dismas. It has happened twice.
No, wherever he's objective, he'll find himself in the same room with me.
All right. Hesbon, should Machakos people go to the polls, or should the Supreme Court hear this, and does Mutua have a chance?
Ben, there are so many indications that the people of Machakos will go back to the polls. I mean, the solid judgment by the 3 appellate court judges tells you that if there is anything the Supreme Court is going to do is just to endorse that judgment, in my own opinion. And I think any Kenyan who is interested in the electoral laws should actually read that judgment and look at it against the backdrop of the High Court judgment on issues to do with why they've nullified, they've nullified the ruling by the High Court. But having said that, I think I have a lot of interest in Machakos. I work in Machakos. I go to Machakos almost every day, and part of me in my family actually votes in Machakos. And if you look at the conversations that people had immediately after the High Court ruling that upheld Governor Mutua's victory, majority of them were of the opinion that the evidence that was adduced in court was sufficient to nullify that election. It's only that it was not adduced in court in a way that convinced the judge. And I think the appellate court judges have seen that. Now, the second thing, if you walk down to Machakos, interact with folks on the ground, you get this sense that, one, they feel that justice was not done by having Governor Alfred Mutua. So in a way, they're saying that overwhelmingly, they are thinking that the person they gave the mandate to be their governor did not become the governor. So majority of them have a feeling that Wavinya actually won. And I think if you combine that sentiment with the fact that, Alfred Mutua has been doing a lot of things, but there are things that you can only do for so long before people get to understand whether they make an impact or not. I think things are not looking very pretty for him. As a governor, and the things that you have to do to streamline the structures, a few heads must roll. In the process, you're also a politician and you're losing support. A few enemies are created here and there. And looking at the history of Wavinya Ndeti, in 2007, I think it was extremely difficult for her when she didn't get the ODM Kenya ticket. She picked another funny ticket and went against the odds.
And she sailed through.
Yeah, and she sailed through. And the fact that she's this one, woman with a never say die attitude, she doesn't attract a lot of media attention. Even after the ruling, she went under the radar, and I think she was working. And just everything about Wavinya Ndeti tells you that Governor Alfred Mutua is a worried man.
All right.
Yes.
So what is your crystal ball on the politics? I mean, a few months or a couple of years ago, Dr. Alfred Mutua was touted to be the next Ukambani political big shots, if you will. And even Dismas Mukwa agreed then. But he's now telling us that Wavinya Ndeti is also coming up. So is this the ultimate governor, contest?
I mean, it is a contest that would probably have a bigger impact in terms of the politics of the greater Ukambani region, because if Mutua falls, I think that would be the end of it, probably the end of him. And then if he falls courtesy of Wavinya Ndeti, you can just imagine how that will elevate Honorable Wavinya Ndeti. And I want to believe that there are two things about politics. That politics is about perception that is created in the mainstream and the legacy media. But more so, politics about what you have on the ground, how in touch you are with people on the ground. And if you look at these two politicians, I would say that I have a lot of respect for Governor Alfred Mutua for what he has done in terms of handling the media, having conversations around the good things that he does, because that is the essence of democracy. Because if you want to be given the mandate, you must put your best foot forward. He has successfully done that. But give it to Honorable Wavinya Ndeti that on the ground, I don't think there are many politicians who match Wavinya Ndeti's mobilization on the ground, being in touch with the people on the ground. And even the emotion that you saw, I don't think it is an emotion that is born out of her leadership prowess. It's an emotion that is born out of the fact that these are the people who have so much hope in me. And now they believe that their hope is coming to fruition.
All right.
And to that extent, if you look at the contest, I would definitely, just like I did before the election, still go with Honorable Wavinya Ndeti.
Kipchumba, Machakos, what gives?
Mutua and Wavinya Ndeti, those are two people of opposites. But the first point, the handshake and the court decision, I think we must say it here loud and clear that a court process, a handshake, they have no relation. Courts make decision based on evidence and how the court was convinced. Two, looking at the bench that made that decision, I will advise Mutua that wherever he had painted those chap merchandise, he needs to go there and give out the tender again. It will be tough. Because when you look at Warsame, Justice Kiage, and Justice Odek, those are solid judicial officers. Two, the other point we must say is this. We have seen a lot of political activity. Mutua has generated a lot of political activity with no actual work being done. He's one of those people who goes around painting roads on earth. Even the person who invented tarmac, you cannot have a tarmac being made in 8 minutes per kilometer. It can, unless you are painting. And even if you are to paint it black, it is a load of speed. So I think if the painting failed, even this election has failed. And two, I wish he had a high appetite for development, the same way he has a high appetite for selfies and photographs. It will have helped a lot.
Right.
But now, going into the Ukambani politics, he did a very bad miscalculation by declaring his presidential elections, and he knew he had a court case. Look at how Alfred Mutua has carried himself around the country. He has been inspecting guard of honors, taking selfies in a bridge in Kericho, going to Nyeri, and nothing is happening in Machakos. These are the kind of leaders we need to do away with as early as...
Is Kalonzo Musyoka celebrating in this?
Yes, he has to celebrate, because any political happening in your backyard that has a capacity or has a probability of you getting premium is a good thing. Right. The other thing is, I think it is also a chance for Kalonzo Musyoka to reinvent himself and to galvanize the Ukambani support base by having them around Wavinya Ndeti. Because when you look at the two, you can tell who is a politician, who is a gymnast. You can tell.
All right. So you guys say this is what we call in football six-pointer, whereby you earn 3 points and you're very closely placed opponent loses 3 points.
Yeah,
And
but you
we'll
know
get to see
now,
that.
what we should not forget, even as we talk about Alfred Mutua, he has a right to appeal to the Supreme Court,
Right.
which I think he says he has done it. But again, it is also a wake-up call to our politicians. You can take us as fools for a certain number of days, but at the end of the day,
Right.
we'll always be right.
We'll wait to see. What up? Let's talk about Babu Owino very quickly. He won. A lot of people were expecting his win to be overturned by the Court of Appeal, but he emerged. It's been upheld. A lot of people are saying it's the handshake. You don't agree? Dismas, very quickly. 30 seconds.
Yeah, if you come across somebody who says that it's because of the handshake that these petitions are being ruled in a particular manner, slap them at the expense of suffering from the penal code. But now, what has happened?
Is it really that inconceivable?
I mean, times above
Don't
number.
know what happens behind the scenes.
Yeah, times above number. The judges and magistrates, they make their rulings based on facts and evidence. So unless, and you know, Babu Owino has been taking many selfies with President Uhuru. I don't know whether if you present that selfie before a Court of Appeal judge, then they'll use that, that will be admitted. I think that's a very funny joke. But now, the tragedy in Kenya, and I want to take you to page 5 of the Standard, is that when we are voting in for leaders, we sacrifice character for charisma. That's the disaster we have in our political space, that we don't look at people, we don't look at the content. That's why, for instance, some people would like to vote in guys on the number of selfies they take. Look, for instance, at Nairobi. There's a story here about Sonko. Sonko has got charisma, but there are those who say that he doesn't have the content for leadership. And we were told that deficiency was going to be cured by Igathe. Igathe disappeared. So now Nairobi is suffering. And the Honorable Musalia Mudavadi has got a very powerful quote there about the ignorance of voters. So voters must learn, wake up to the reality that if you vote for wrong persons, don't expect miracles. For 5 years, you're going to be confined into those, impunity, mediocrity, and corruption.
Right.
So next time when people are going to vote, they must ask themselves, where are my selfish interests here? And we must run away from these identity politics. That because I'm a Kikuyu man, I must vote in a Kikuyu president. Because I'm a Kisii man, I must vote in a Kisii man to become president. Because look at the people who voted for Sonko in Nairobi. They're the ones who are crying today. And when you look at social media and exchanges in the streets, people are saying, but you guys invited this trouble on yourselves. You voted for him.
Right.
So enjoy the 5 years. Or ask Jubilee to impeach this guy. And at some stage, we may go back to the political parties and ask ourselves, do the political party leaders have the best interest of their voters at heart, or do they just want to have some funny guys running for political offices? Look at the money which is going to be wasted in Machakos because of this kind of mischief. I mean, how can a rational human being believe that you can have a road done in 8 hours?
Right.
I mean, those guys are from your village, Ben Kitil.
All right.
Do you think it's actually true that you have those miracles in Ukambani, that you can have a road coming up in a short space of time? And then why should we believe politicians when they say we are going to put up a bridge even if there is no river? So we should wake up.
All right, very fair point, but it would be very unfair to discuss this without Dr. Alfred Mutua himself to justify.
No, he's going to produce a movie as a response to this.
All right, let's... enough of this. Thank you, gentlemen, for this. A lot we shall be keeping an eye on this. Our political team will be keeping an eye on this to find out what will be happening. What will the Supreme Court verdict be? Will they take the case on? Will Machakos go back to the polls? But it is, of course, good tidings for Babu Owino in Embakasi East. Let's take another quick commercial break. We are back shortly for a final 20 minutes or so. We shall be discussing about President Uhuru Kenyatta's latest appointments to boards of parastatals. A lot of politicians seem to be, or election losers in the last election, have been appointed to chairman or board member in some parastatal or the other. We'll talk about that. And we'll also have a final thoughts, the gentleman's final thoughts on the issue of succession. Joseph Kinyua's succession, that is as head of public service. Don't go too far. This is Sunday Edition.